The morning air was crisp and still, an eerie calm hanging over the Phoenix suburb. The sun had barely begun its ascent when the tranquility was pierced by the wailing sirens of approaching police cars. Outside the modest Collins family home, officers stepped out onto the pavement, their breath visible in the cold air. They were responding to a distress call made by a family member, an urgent plea that hinted at something horribly amiss inside. The great aunt, who had placed the call, stood on the lawn in a state of shock, her eyes wide but unfocused. She muttered incoherently, her hands trembling as she gestured toward the house. "I found them. It's all wrong," she managed to say before dissolving into tears. The officers attempted to calm her, but her words were fragmented and offered little clarity. As they approached the front door, a pungent smell hit them, a sharp blend of cleaning chemicals that lingered ominously in the air. It was not just the odor that unsettled them, it was the implication behind it. The officers exchanged wary glances, realizing that whatever awaited them inside was deliberately obscured. With measured steps, they entered the Collins living room. The scene was one of chaos. Children's toys scattered across the floor, a teetering stack of laundry on the sofa, and dishes piled haphazardly in the sink. Yet amid this domestic disarray, there was a haunting silence. No cries or laughter of children. Their eyes scanned the room meticulously, noting every detail. The absence of the children was a glaring anomaly against the backdrop of their belongings. A toy truck lay overturned by the doorway, its wheels still spinning slightly as if recently disturbed. The officers moved cautiously through the house, each room presenting more questions than answers. The kitchen offered no clues beyond its disheveled appearance. The bathroom was unremarkable, save for more cleaning supplies left uncapped on the counter. It was when they reached the hallway, leading to the bedrooms, that their pace slowed considerably. Behind one door lay an unimaginable truth they dreaded facing but could not avoid. They hesitated at first, exchanging a silent understanding of what might be beyond that door. Steeling themselves for what they feared they might find, an officer gently turned the knob and pushed open the door to reveal what no one should ever have to witness. In a small bedroom painted with pastel colors meant to cradle dreams and laughter lay a heart-wrenching scene. 3 small bodies lifeless on their beds. Zachary, with his tousled hair still clinging to his stuffed animal, Moira, with her adventurous spirit now forever stilled, Chloe, so small and serene as if merely asleep. The discovery struck like a hammer blow, a confirmation of tragedy beyond comprehension. Officers reeled as they called for backup, their voices steady despite their inner turmoil. Forensic teams were summoned immediately. The house became a hive of activity as investigators began piecing together this grim puzzle. The great-aunt's sobs echoed from outside, while neighbors gathered in hushed clusters trying to make sense of it all. Just as they began marking off sections of the house for evidence collection, one officer noticed something unusual: a notebook partially hidden under Zachary's bed. It seemed trivial at first glance, yet carefully placed as if meant to be discovered. The notebook potentially held insights into Ariana's mind, a key to understanding what drove her to such unfathomable actions, but opening it would have to wait until everything else was meticulously documented. As dusk settled over Phoenix and shadows stretched long across quiet streets, one question loomed larger than any other. What could have driven a mother to such desolation? The answer lay somewhere within those walls or within Ariana herself, a mystery begging to be unraveled. As the forensic team descended upon the modest Collins home, a palpable heaviness lingered in the air, a testament to the tragedy that had unfolded. Their mission was clear: uncover the truth hidden within those walls. The children's bedroom, where innocence had been so brutally extinguished, became a focal point. Inside, the room was deceptively serene, its pastel hues masking the horror it housed. The team moved with precision, their eyes trained on every surface. It wasn't long before they noticed something peculiar: the meticulous cleaning surrounding the crime scene. The floorboards gleamed unnaturally, and surfaces were wiped spotless. It was as if someone had attempted to erase more than just fingerprints. The lead investigator frowned at this revelation. Such thoroughness was uncommon unless it was premeditated. They swabbed surfaces and collected samples meticulously, aware that these small details might unravel Ariana's narrative. Among these findings, a more sinister clue emerged. Underneath Zachary's bed, near where the notebook had been casually tossed, lay traces of a fine powder, faint remnants of pills. This discovery suggested sedation might have played a role in this grim tableau. These findings necessitated deeper probing into Ariana's actions and motivations. The team knew they had to tread carefully. Each piece of evidence needed to be scrutinized under the harshest light. Transitioning from the scene, attention turned toward Ariana herself. Now seated in an interrogation room at the Phoenix Police Department, her demeanor was unsettlingly calm, her gaze distant. Detectives approached her cautiously, their questions gentle yet probing. "Ariana," one began softly, "can you walk us through what happened that morning?" Her response was vague, her words drifting like smoke in the wind. "They were napping," she muttered repeatedly, eyes flickering with an unreadable emotion. This account conflicted sharply with forensic timelines and evidence collected from the house, details she seemed oblivious to or unwilling to acknowledge. The inconsistencies in her story prompted detectives to delve deeper into Ariana's recent activities and mental state. They needed to bridge these gaps if they hoped to understand her actions fully. The next logical step was interviewing family members at their home, a place once familiar, now shadowed by suspicion and grief. Gathered around a worn kitchen table, relatives spoke hesitantly about Ariana's recent behavior shifts. They were caught in a painful dichotomy, protecting their own while seeking clarity for their loss. She wasn't herself lately, an uncle confessed reluctantly. Always on her phone or computer. Another relative added hesitantly, she'd been reading up on mental health issues online. Maybe she was trying to find answers for herself? Their testimonies painted a picture of a woman increasingly isolated and consumed by unknown struggles, a crucial piece missing from the puzzle thus far. Hearing this stirred something within the detectives. They realized Ariana's digital footprint might hold vital clues about her mental state leading up to that fateful day. As dusk settled over Phoenix once more, detectives found themselves standing on the precipice of understanding yet another layer of complexity in this heartbreaking case. The chapter closed on a chilling note as one detective received an alert on his phone, a notification about new activity on Ariana's internet accounts after her arrest. The implications were unnerving. Was someone else involved in this tragic narrative, or was there another unknown dimension to Ariana's mind they had yet to uncover? This revelation left them staring into an abyss of unanswered questions, a haunting reminder that truth often lies tangled in shadows. Inside the interrogation room at the Phoenix Police Department, the air was tense with expectation. Detectives sat across from Ariana, who was visibly struggling to maintain her composure. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched a tissue, her eyes darting around the sterile room. They needed her to recount the events of that fateful night, but Ariana's mind seemed trapped in a fog. "Ariana," Detective Mills began gently, "we need to understand what happened with Zachary, Moira, and Chloe. Can you tell us about that night?" Ariana hesitated, her voice barely above a whisper. I wanted to protect them," she said, tears welling up in her eyes. The detectives exchanged a quick look, sensing they were on the brink of a breakthrough. "Protect them from what?" Mills pressed softly. Tears streamed down Ariana's cheeks as she confessed. "I sedated them. I didn't want them to feel any pain. They were always so scared of everything." This admission, though chilling, provided the detectives with crucial insight into Ariana's mindset. It shifted their focus toward understanding her mental state and emotional triggers leading up to that day. With newfound urgency, detectives turned their attention to the cyber unit, where Ariana's digital footprint was under scrutiny. The sheer volume of data was overwhelming. Emails, browsing histories, and social media interactions created a dense web of information. Detective Carter scrolled through page after page of Ariana's online activity. "There's so much here," he remarked, shaking his head at the endless stream of websites and forums. "Look for patterns," Mills suggested. anything that might indicate her psychological state or stressors. After hours of combing through data, they stumbled upon significant threads. Ariana had frequented forums dedicated to parenting stress and mental health coping mechanisms. These virtual visits revealed her desperate search for answers and relief from overwhelming pressures. Armed with this knowledge, detectives sought expert opinion to interpret Ariana's potential mental health conditions. They consulted Dr. Lawson, a local psychiatrist known for his expertise in postpartum disorders. In his office, filled with books and degrees lining the walls, Dr. Lawson listened intently as detectives shared their findings. Given what you've described, Dr. Lawson began thoughtfully, it's possible Ariana was experiencing undiagnosed postpartum depression and anxiety. These conditions could severely impact a mother's ability to cope with stress or perceive reality accurately. Mills nodded, but remained cautious. But can we definitively say that's what drove her actions? Dr. Lawson shook his head gently. Without more data and ethical considerations, it's difficult to make definitive judgments about her culpability purely based on these symptoms, he explained cautiously. Nonetheless, these insights added another layer to Ariana's profile. A woman caught in the throes of mental illness and societal pressures without adequate support. As they left the psychiatrist's office, a sense of urgency propelled the detectives forward. They knew they were building towards something critical, a fuller picture of Ariana's life unraveling before tragedy struck. Back at headquarters, as they pieced together this multifaceted puzzle, an alarming notification flashed across Detective Carter's computer screen. A new login attempt on one of Ariana's accounts post-arrest. "This changes everything," Carter whispered in disbelief. The implications were unnerving. Was someone else involved or manipulating events behind the scenes? The chapter closed on this unsettling cliffhanger, a reminder that beneath every answer lay deeper questions yet untangled. The atmosphere in the Phoenix Police Department was thick with anticipation. Detective Carter's discovery of a new login attempt on Ariana's account had opened a Pandora's box of possibilities. As the team gathered their thoughts, Detective Mills proposed an immediate review of Ariana's diaries recovered from her home. In the dimly lit archive room, the detectives sat surrounded by stacks of files. The diaries, bound in worn leather, were scattered across the table. Each page was a potential window into Ariana's mind, offering glimpses of her internal struggles. Detective Carter flipped through the entries, noting their cryptic nature. "These are all over the place," Mills remarked, his brow furrowed. "But look here," he pointed to a passage. "She mentions feeling like she's drowning and needing to protect the kids from a chaotic world." The entries were sporadic, each more fragmented than the last, yet they consistently echoed a theme of overwhelming burden and distorted protection instincts. This revelation prompted a deeper exploration into Ariana's past experiences, what led her to believe such protection was necessary. Their next stop was the office of Dr. Foster, Ariana's family therapist. There, they hoped to uncover deeper historical triggers that might have shaped her mental state. Dr. Foster welcomed them cautiously, bound by confidentiality but willing to provide insight within ethical limits. Ariana experienced significant trauma in her past, Dr. Foster explained carefully. She endured a sudden loss at a young age, which left unresolved grief impacting her sense of reality and self-worth. Detective Mills nodded, understanding now that these experiences could have compounded Ariana's distorted views about protecting her children at any cost. "She often spoke about wanting to shield them from harm," Dr. Foster added quietly, but her perception was clouded by past grief and anxiety. These insights painted a complex psychological backdrop for Ariana's actions, layers of trauma influencing her motives and perceptions. With this information in hand, the detectives returned to the forensic laboratory to cross-examine all gathered evidence in light of these revelations. They needed to solidify Ariana's motives and mental state for the impending trial. Inside the lab, they scrutinized the sedatives found at the crime scene. An odd pattern emerged. Ariana had acquired multiple prescriptions from different pharmacies over several months. This suggests she might have been self-medicating, Carter observed as he reviewed the pharmacy records. However, this discovery introduced legal uncertainties. The inconsistency in sedative use could complicate courtroom strategies. As they pieced together these complexities, Detective Mills received an urgent call from their legal team preparing for trial. "We need definitive evidence linking these patterns to her mental state," the attorney insisted. Tension mounted as they realized that while they had uncovered much about Ariana's psychological shadows, proving it conclusively in court would be challenging. Just as they began strategizing their next steps, another alert flashed on Carter's screen. A second unauthorized attempt to access Ariana's account had just occurred. This development sent chills down their spines, a sinister indication that someone else might be involved or trying to manipulate events from behind the scenes. The detectives exchanged anxious glances. What if they were dealing with more than just Ariana's troubled mind? As night fell over Phoenix once again, they stood on the brink of unraveling a deeper conspiracy, one that threatened to eclipse everything they thought they knew about this tragic case. The courtroom buzzed with hushed conversations as the trial of Ariana Collins approached its critical juncture. Detective Carter's discovery of unauthorized attempts to access Ariana's accounts had added a layer of complexity to an already intricate case. As the prosecution prepared their arguments, they faced a daunting challenge, balancing the pursuit of justice with Ariana's mental health struggles. In the public prosecutor's office, tension was palpable. The legal team debated late into the night, grappling with the moral implications of their strategy. "We have to argue that this was both an intentional act and a result of diminished capacity due to her mental health," one prosecutor insisted, tapping his pen nervously. The room fell silent, acknowledging the delicate balance they needed to achieve. Opening statements set the stage for an emotional courtroom battle. The community watched, torn between grief and a desire for understanding. As the trial unfolded, witness testimony took center stage in the Phoenix County Courthouse. Each account painted a fragment of Ariana's life, from her family's testimonies about her erratic behavior to experts detailing her psychological condition. Cross-examinations proved grueling, challenging the validity of Ariana's mental health claims against the prosecutorial evidence. Is it possible? One defense attorney argued passionately that Ariana was driven by an overwhelming compulsion beyond her control. The prosecution countered with methodical precision, pointing out inconsistencies in Ariana's actions that suggested premeditation. Expert testimonies provided crucial insights into Ariana's state during the incident. Dr. Lawson took the stand, explaining how undiagnosed postpartum depression and anxiety could distort perceptions and decision-making. Her reality was skewed by untreated mental illness, he testified, his voice solemn yet firm. The courtroom sessions gradually built towards closing arguments, each side presenting their narrative of Ariana's motivations, a clash between morality and legality. The defense painted a picture of a mother trapped in a mental health crisis, while the prosecution emphasized accountability for her deliberate actions. As these final arguments resonated through the courtroom, jurors faced an enormous responsibility to weigh Ariana's intentions against her mental incapacity. The deliberation room became a microcosm of broader societal debates about crime and mental illness. The verdict loomed large, not just as a resolution to this case, but as a statement on how society views accountability intertwined with compassion. Tension filled the air when the jury returned, a collective breath held by all present. "We find the defendant," began the foreperson, "guilty on all counts, with recommendations for psychiatric treatment." Gasps echoed through the room, reflecting society's struggle to reconcile justice with empathy. Outside the courthouse, reporters scrambled for statements, while community members gathered in small groups, discussing what this verdict meant for their understanding of crime and mental illness. As Detective Carter left the courthouse steps behind him, he felt a lingering unease, an acknowledgement that justice had been served on paper, but perhaps not fully understood in spirit. The unauthorized access attempts remained unresolved, a shadow over what seemed like closure. In the quiet aftermath, one question lingered. Had they truly unraveled every thread of this tragic tapestry? Or did some truths remain elusive within Ariana's troubled mind? This haunting uncertainty left an indelible mark, a reminder that even when cases conclude, some mysteries persist beyond judgment.